So, hello Nigel, the Rat Pack singer, entertainer, presenter, wedding toastmaster, corporate and charity events presenter. Is there anything else
Wow.
that I should add to that?
Well, that's an intro, isn't it?
Bit of a mouthful, I must say. So there's lots, Nigel, I'd like to talk to you about this afternoon. Firstly, thank you for joining me on the second of my catch-up sessions now. It's lovely to hear your voice and to see you. It's been quite some time now, hasn't it?
Absolute pleasure, and thanks for asking me to join you. It's it's something a little bit different, and it's test, and it also exercises your presentation skills yourself, doesn't it?
Well, it does, you see, and it's just nice to talk to people that actually we only really know each other on a mainly professional level. And a lot of the people that I'm doing a catch-up session with in the next week or two are of the same. Luckily, a lot of the people that I'm talking to are actually good friends as well, like yourself. So it's quite nice to just touch base with people, find out how they're doing, how they're coping, and find a little bit about who you are, and we'll see what people think.
How exciting!
So, what we'll do is we'll start with Nigel. If you would like to tell us a little bit about where you were born, your childhood, and all that sort of stuff, fire away.
That's all going in my biography.
Well, we'll get first glimpse, will we?
You'll get first, absolutely. I haven't started writing it yet, but well, it's an absolute pleasure, and thanks for inviting me along to have a chat with you today. Yeah, I'm much like I think yourself. I'm a Kettering born and bred boy. I was born in 1971, and now they're all saying 71. He doesn't look old enough. Of course they are. That's what they're saying.
Well, I was thinking exactly the same thing myself, Nigel.
So yeah, 71 in the Linden Avenue end of Kettering, off Linden Avenue, and and I've lived here most of my life, apart from a spell down for a couple of years down in Southend when I was in my late teens. I lived here all my life, so I went to a mixture of schools as a child. Went to what was Henry Gotch. Very early on, and then to Grange School. So most of my junior years were at Grange School.
Where's Grange School then?
On the Grange estate off Stamford Road.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah.
And we lived, and that's primarily because at the time, so this is late 70s, early 80s. Way before you were born. We lived on the Grange estate, and great memories sort of growing up there during the late 70s, early 80s. And we lived in one of the Masonettes, which is on the precinct, the shopping precinct, just above it. Yeah. So that's where I kind of grew up from there. My parents, prior to that, owned a general store, convenience store that was down London Road. And I'm not quite sure what it is now. It was a bowling shop, Crown Green bowling shop for a while. But they had that for a while, and then unfortunately my parents were divorced, and for a while we lived with my aunt who had a draper's shop that was halfway up Mill Road. I bet there's some people now that are thinking back. Oh, I remember that draper shop. Yeah, my auntie owned a draper shop. So we lived there for a number of years, and then we moved to the Grange estate. And so, sort of growing up on that estate in that particular period, was lots and lots of kids, sort of our age group, and that was in the heyday, if you like, of playing out on your bikes, getting into mischief. All that sort of thing. So growing up in that period was great. Early 80s, so I went to Grange School, which was just literally around the corner, and after that I went off to Kettering Boys School, which is now called, of course, the site of Tresham College. So in Kettering on Wimble Avenue. So
My
yeah, I went to
dad
there.
went there actually, and I think without without causing too much offence, I hope, I think around the same sort of period. Um, my dad was born in the year '66, so 5 years
Okay.
5 years prior to you.
So I bet I was joining, and he was going out
I think
the
maybe.
top end of the school. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so yes, but he went to that school, and so did my grandfather, I think, as well.
Wow.
So yes, it's a small little world. Do you still speak to any of the people that you went to school with, Nigel?
There's a really good group that's I think on Facebook that's recently started for those that grew up on the Grange estate,
Oh,
and I've been seeing some great photos popping up on that Facebook page.
yeah.
I've got to dig it out. There's a 40-year juniors, which I've got no idea what that equates to now in the new pennies. With I don't know what that is what year that is, but sort of
Juniors, I think.
11, so
Yeah.
11 years old, so I
Year
don't know what that
7,
is.
I think now.
Is that what that is now?
Yeah.
I've got a great picture somewhere of our I think it was one of our plays that we done for Nativity, and there's a picture of me. I think I must have been about 11, so all of of that sort of there was a lot of children from that class, and I'm that year, and I'm in touch with a few of them.
The main question is though,
So,
Nigel, what part did you play in the Nativity? If you played a part, did you play a part in
um,
the Nativity? Is this where it all started for you, or
well, not really. Not really, because I was rubbish. I was rubbish at that sort of thing, and actually, I don't think that year, the fourth year. So this is got to be 1982 probably. We didn't do a nativity. I think it was a
oh,
play. It was called something like, and those that are in it will probably remember this, Charcoal Burner's Son. God knows what that's about. I've no idea, but and I played the ogre.
yoga?
The ogre. So
Wow.
it was an easy part to play, Joshua, because I had like a mask on, and
Right.
yeah, and but I
I think
delivered
I'd be
my
quite
line.
good at that role as an ogre. Just I think with the sheer height and size of me, yeah,
That's right.
quite
That's
over.
right.
You
You
see,
clearly need a mask, though. Obviously, you need something to make
very,
yourself look a
very
little
much
bit.
indeed. Of course, that's right. So you said this nativity play that didn't happen. Were they doing it like nowadays? What they've done is, when I was a child, I went to Parkway Junior School,
Oh,
and
okay.
we had the nativity. We had a very traditional nativity in All Saints Church, and it was wonderful. But with my stepson's class, and actually a few years before that, when I used to teach at the primary schools, they all changed the
Yeah.
modern take on the nativity now, where you've got
Mm,
I think one of them was a Jerusalem's Got Talent or something like that, and they had people, with Simon Cowell pressing
excellent.
on the baby Jesus. It's ever so strange, but such are the times where times
Yeah.
are changing, but I do think that the traditional Christmas and the traditional things are going to be coming back into fashion again, because I think after this lockdown thing, you appreciate those small little things.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think.
I, th- I think a lot of education has quite a challenge on their hands, and making sure that it's very inclusive,
Yeah.
and that's understandable.
Yeah.
Because there's such diversity now,
Yeah.
and so there should be. So there should be.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's got to be inclusive, and it's got to
Yeah.
be diverse. And I think we're just naturally seeing the change of that creative way of including all students into any artistic sort of presentation. I mean, I didn't study when I went on to Kettering Boys. I didn't do drama. I didn't do music as part of my curriculum. I mean, looking back now, I probably should have done it, but I didn't take those classes. But I always felt a real sort of connection and a pull towards music, particularly. And I suppose that's kind of where that that started around that age group when I was around 12. I mean, a lot of kids were listening to, I don't know really what was out of that kind of thing. It was like the birth, I suppose, of a lot of house music and that sort of thing. And those kind of styles that were coming through of music. And I was listening to sort of old albums like of Glenn Miller, and the big band stuff.
Well,
And really, I suppose.
Clearly that has influenced your career in that sort of genre of music, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I I mean, sort of started tinkering a little bit with vocally, because there's some superb vocal harmony songs within that whole Glenn Miller era, if you like. Things like your Kalamazoo, Pennsylvania 65000, all those kind of like multi harmony songs, and they were great ones to sort of get into and try, especially if that style of that era. And then I sort of started to do it a little bit like that, and then I sort of put it down for a number of years. And I learned cornet for a number of years, but unfortunately wasn't very good at it. And I kind of found myself in really having more of being drawn to that style of music, that big band sort of sound. And then I put it down for a few years, obviously through doing schooling and that sort of thing. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I sort of picked up the idea again of singing again. So I started to do a lot more around your sort of mainstream pop and that sort of thing. And it got to about 1997, and I started to do a bit of recording in a studio with a guy called Dave Smith.
I would have been 6.
Cheers for that.
Just so you know, I always do this. I love sticking that in. I always stick in what year I was born. I think because a lot of people don't realise that I'm so young, because I look so old and I talk so old and I'm miserable like an old man. And I think people forget that I'm actually only 29 years old. But no,
a mature head on your shoulders, that's what you have.
Well, it must be the receding hairline, Nigel, I think, you know. But talking about your not obsession, but your tendency to go towards the big band stuff, that would have been at that time, as a teenager, quite the unusual thing to do. And I wonder if it was like me, because I, at that age, when I was experimenting with different sorts of music, and I was listening to all this horrible stuff that other children of my age were listening to, I wanted to listen to classical, I wanted to listen to sacred music, so I was the odd one out. But looking back now, I'm glad I did, because it certainly has influenced what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Did you sort of experience that when you were growing up as well?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly before I was starting to be influenced by people around me and my peers and the teenagers sort of within my group. Yeah. Before that happened, I kind of followed my own line, if you like, and listened to my own style of music and the sort of thing that I enjoyed listening to. And I found that whole sort of big band sound of that era, and moving into sort of like then into the 50s and then period of the 60s, and then as we started to move out of that period where the live performances, where people would go out and they would go to maybe a club and they'd actually watch a live performance, that sort of started to dissipate and disappear around the time of the birth of sort of the record, really, and the disco, and it then became more cost effective for a venue really to have a disco and a DJ than it obviously a band, and that was part of why that sort of started to fizzle away. And there's certainly over the years been much more of a resurgence of that style of music, and that's very much down to artists, I suppose, who took a bit of a punt at the time around sort of 2002, 2003, with Robbie Williams recording that's the number of swing out. I think he'd done 2 albums, 1, 2, and a few other artists that were kind of coming through on that sort of reignited people's interest in people like Tony Bennett, who in fact has just this week celebrated his 94th birthday, and he's still performing and still singing.
Brilliant.
So it's a phenomenal style of music that has seen it almost go full circle, which was why I think when I was originally interested in that style of music, and I really got something out of it back from it when I listened to old vinyls that I wasn't getting from the music of the time.
Yeah.
That just goes to show that that was the beginnings of that music coming back through. But it really wasn't, as I was saying, it really wasn't until sort of the mid-90s that I started to do. And during my late teenage years, I had a bit of a penchant for George Michael and all of that sort of incredible music songwriting talent of that period. And I think I listened to a lot of that music because I think with a lot of people that would enjoy or enjoyed his music over the years, they'll understand that certain songs meant certain things to them in that part of their life.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why there was a real sort of a direction towards that style of music, and I was quite sort of narrow to that style and his type of music and really in sort of soul for a number of years. But it wasn't until early 2000s that something the bizarrest thing kind of happened, and it was almost like an epiphany, and it suddenly clicked what I was supposed to be doing and what I was supposed to be performing, and why I wasn't performing pop because I was rubbish at it, and why I wasn't performing maybe soul, although I am really trying really hard to get into a bit of soul music and moving that kind of that material because I really do enjoy it. But at that period, it was very clear that that's what I was supposed to be doing, and that was around 2003. There was a performance, a musical performance of an artist that appeared on Michael Parkinson's show at the time when he had his sort of comeback career second time round. And I was sat there watching the telly. It was about 10:30 at night, and he had this musical guest on, and he was really, really new to the UK, not really well known, and he was a Canadian performer.
Oh, I wonder who that is.
A Canadian performer by the name of Michael Bublé. And I think it was.
I thought you were going to say Justin Bieber.
Bryan Adams. Now, although having said that, I did enjoy the music of Bryan Adams during the 90s, and a phenomenal performer. I'm very lucky to go and see him perform twice.
Oh, wow.
Superb performer, a great export from Canada. And he came on. This Mr. Bublé came on, started to perform, and it wasn't so much about him as an individual as an artist, as just how he was delivering that style of music. And it suddenly just occurred to me, almost like an epiphany, in minutes. That is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was very, very strange how quick that came to me. And it almost like connected up the dots from when I was 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I decided, and this, bearing in mind, this was 2003. But for various different things going on in my life at the time, and family life, I actually consciously decided not to do anything about it and sort of dive into it until around 2009. 2010, so it was about 7 years later, but I always knew through that period that is what I was going to do and dive headlong into that style of music. So that was a bit of a strange really moment in time, and that was kind of the birth for me of what I knew I was going to do, but it was a long time coming, and it wasn't until sort of 2000 and back into 2009 when I decided that I wanted to record with Dave Smith at the Beck Studios in Wellingborough. I wanted to record such great songs that I'd been hearing and listening to for so many years, like Quando Quando, Sway, Save the Last Night, all those great sort of Latin songs that had more of a sort of swing and big band sort of twist to it.
Yeah.
And I decided I wanted to record an album and actually put some of this. So I'd never really listened to myself on recording before. So that was quite an eye
It's
opener.
strange, isn't it? It's like listening to
Yeah.
yourself on the telephone. I was literally just talking to Vicky Bax about this only last night, and how you kind of pick apart every aspect of the recording, and if you're anything like me, and probably a lot of the other performers, you pick out the negatives before any of the positives in these things, and you think, oh, I wish I'd done it this way, or I could have done it that way, or you know, and there's never such a strange thing listening back to them recordings, and I think we're just lucky now that we can edit and we can put big things back into place and stuff like that, you know.
Well, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think, but I learned, but this whole process of performing in this way for the last sort of 11 years has really, it's taught me a lot about myself, I think, as well, and understanding more about who I am as an individual, and not necessarily I think I'm probably more critical of myself than I think anybody is, and I think that's the same for most people.
Yeah.
But I've really had to learn to sort of what you were saying there about, you know, singing from a performance perspective, singing, and that is your voice, that is who you are. And I know that we can be a bit critical and say, oh, well, we can go that, I should have sung that a bit better, but the reality is that's what you're producing, and that is as unique as the next performance. So I think I learned a lot about myself over that period, about not putting myself under so much pressure. That wasn't the case at the start when I first started performing. My first real major performance was it was a real sort of jump in both feet, and I wanted to do this album as I said, and I thought, oh, we've got to do it for a reason. And you probably know where this is going, but obviously for those that are listening, hopefully they will listen to me gabbling on.
They wouldn't have to, Nigel, because I'll make them. I'll send this to every person I know.
People don't really get the opportunity to speak, I suppose, and I don't get the opportunity to speak to people in this way. And it is nice to sort of explain how it's all come about. But, you know, there are some people that are really deep rooted right at the start of this. And I thought I'd do this album. So I thought, and at the time, there was a good friend of mine whose mother was ill with cancer. And I went to a lady called Diana Patrick, who at the time, Di was the fundraising manager at Cransby Hospice. And I went to Di and I said, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is what I can do. I'd like to do this sort of album. Then we can maybe sell it and make a bit of money. I don't know what will happen, but it'll all go to charity and etc. And because I paid it all out myself, and I said, whatever you make on this, you can have it. Because for me, it was a little experiment, you know, of what it would turn out like. And she said, and I really expected her to say, okay, leave it with us and we'll let you know. And she went, yes, okay, that's a good idea. Would you like to perform at one of our concerts? And I thought, and that's the moment where you have a decision. And this is really, really, really important to anybody listening who is going through anything at the moment where they've got to make a decision. We all know that if you say no, generally nothing changes, nothing happens, it's not dangerous, you carry on as normal. If you say yes, who knows what doors open. And that was so important. And I just, before I could even think about it, I said yes. And that was it. And she said, brilliant, I'll send you all the details. And this was actually a concert. This was my first main, which was May 2010 at the parish church. And I don't know how many were there. I think it was something like about 400, Joshua, something like that, 450, something like that. I don't know what it holds, but it was full. And
I think I saw one of the people there.
Were you?
Yes, I did come to. I've tried to go to every fundraiser possible, or because obviously I was a chorister at the church at the time.
Yeah.
So I knew about all these things going on in the church before they were even published, and So I probably was there, and I think I do remember.
Wow.
I remember. Who else was there? I can't remember who else performed now, but there were quite a few. There was. Am I right in saying so? There were
Yeah,
performers.
you're right, absolutely. And this is so ingrained in my brain because this was the moment where I had to give myself what I call a checkup from the neck up. I took myself aside and I said, if you don't do this, there is no point you doing any of it. You have got to do this and get through this. And needless to say, we did. We done the performance, and I sung. I done about 3 songs or something during the course of the
Yeah.
the performance. But the place was full, and it was the most scariest and most exhilarating experience. And it was almost like it was a box ticked. And I knew from that moment that I could be pretty fearless with wherever I performed, whatever I did, however many people it were that I was performing to. It didn't matter. I could do it. And that was a great concert with our dear friend Farrell Smith,
Yeah.
and a wonderful voice of a young lady at I don't know whether she's still singing, called Georgina Ashcroft. And then there was a young lad also that sang with us as well, he'll kill me if he sees this, whose name escapes me, and I'm so sorry.
We'll have to
He'll kill me.
find out.
He'll kill me. I was only thinking about his. He'll come back to me in a minute. And that was a real sort of like learning curve at that point. And I thought, you know, if I can do this, I can do anything. And that kind of gave birth to this fearlessness of performing, because I've never really performed before. And the only way I could do it, and I don't know whether you do this same thing, is by taking on almost another persona. And that's how I did it. And that gave birth to the other part of me, which is NA. And as I always, not available. And that kind of, that was it. And that gave birth to that other person. And because I always think that if I've got a challenge and I use it in my other IT professional life as well.
Yeah.
If there's something that I know that I'm doing a big presentation to a board or something like that, I always think, well, Nigel might not be able to do this, but NA can do it. And it's almost puts you in a different place in your head. It's very, very, it's a clever process.
It is. And I think a lot of people, and a lot of people do that. Because I was watching only yesterday an interview. I think it was on the Graham Norton show, and I think it was Meryl Streep. And Meryl Streep's name is actually Mary. It's not Meryl. And Mary runs in her family, but she chose the name Meryl, and she's grown up with that name Meryl, and she uses that name now as an adult. But a lot of other actors and singers, they all have these names, and you think, oh, that's their name. They all have a real name. And it is very much like what you were just saying. They use that name as a character to, not a character as such, but like you said, like a persona. And that's that person. And I've chosen the tenor, you know, because that's what I am.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Probably what I'm worth now as well. But you know, that's
brilliant.
That's the brand. That's what it is. That's who you are. That's what you're singing for. And yeah, it does help. But I often think to myself I think it's a negative thing. Everyone always says it's not, but whenever I perform, I'm just myself, you know. So I forget things. I'm clumsy, and I say things that I shouldn't say, probably, you know. But everyone has a different style, and that's just mine. That's just the natural way I am. But with yours, you said you never did any drama at school.
Yeah.
But I suppose with the sort of the Rat Pack and the swing and all the sort of stuff that you do now, I suppose, like you say, it is almost an act, isn't it?
To a certain extent, it is. I mean, early on, especially when I was asked if I could present different events, like Pride Pride in Northamptonshire Awards and Bedford Awards, and all these kind of charity things that I've been absolutely, very lucky to be able to be a part of along the way, and doing 10 and also attending and performing at and presenting and hosting 10 years of the Cransley Hospice Summer Ball, 10 years on track. I mean, that was an incredible run. I don't know how I got away with it for 10 years. Who knows? But
who knows, Nigel? Only you know.
over the years, I think it was less and less about being the pizzazz, and more about more of my own character eventually came into it. And I think, if I listen to and watch anything that of my performances very early on, they're a lot more sort of very specific to other artists, and you could see a lot of similarities. And I think all performers take certain aspects and guidance from those that have tread the path before them, until you suddenly break on, make your own path, and you have your own style. And I'm a lot more comfortable in my performing skin now than I ever were when I started. I was very much more conscious about how I stood, where the microphone stand was, how my hands were being held, and that was overthinking it. And I think eventually, after sort of a couple of years, I worried less about that, and I concentrated more on entertaining. And I think that was the point where I kind of branched off on my own. And I think it's important for people to to understand that there is a real difference. They look similar, but there is a real difference between confidence and arrogance. And it's important for people to know that sometimes if they think an individual might be a bit arrogant, it's not so much about the arrogance, it's just about having confidence and being a bit more fearless.
And I can't, I quite agree with you, because nobody else is going to do that for you. We are ultimately, we have management teams, yes, we have people working for us, whatever, but ultimately we have to sell ourselves. And if you've not got, I mean, I'm hark at me, full of anxiety, and I get so anxious before I go on to perform, or and I often think, oh, what if this goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? But once I'm up there and I'm performing, I give the performance of my life. I'll always perform to the best of my ability, and that's what I want people to see. But behind closed doors, it's a very different matter. And a lot of people are the same, Nigel. You see,
absolutely.
Must just be the way it is for us performers,
I think we are. I mean, I can't really pinpoint. If you was to say, why did you start performing? I can't really pinpoint the why. I really don't know. I think it's I think what it stems back to is this desire to improve and be a better me, maybe, and give something back that I was fortunate to have the ability to do, and maybe use it to give it back. Maybe that was part of it. I don't know. And just, I suppose, just to be yourself, be who you are. And I think that through the whole of life, it doesn't matter whether it's about performing, or whether it's about who you are as an individual, or your sexuality, or anything. I think you just need to be who you are, because life is full of constraints as it is, without having to be something that you're not. And I think that's so important.
And I think that comes with age. I think.
Yeah,
because,
I think so.
I mean, I've always performed, ever since I can remember, but what I was performing 10 years ago to what I'm performing now is completely, it's not different, but it is. The way that I perform is different, because I think a lot of the songs take on a different sort of meaning when one has such life experiences, negative and positive. You kind of attach that to these certain songs, and you can feel the song. You know what the emotion is. You know what that person was writing about, and you can see that in the way that you're singing. And I do think that comes with the age, because obviously at 18 or whatever, you don't have much life experience really in the grand scheme of things. You know,
Mm,
it's you're going on a basis of what you have already seen that person do.
mm,
For me, it was Pavarotti or later on Alfie Boe and Andrea Bocelli,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
Russell Watson, and all that sort of thing. So it's very different
Mm.
to the Ronan Keaton or whatever his name is, and I'm really bad at remembering things. What's his?
Are you thinking of Boyzone?
That's the one, yes. Boyzone, but I was more
Yeah.
fascinated with Boyzone for a different reason. But we won't go down that path. So anyway, Nigel, how has the past 6 months been for you in this lockdown sort of situation?
It's yeah, well, it's been a little bit bizarre. I caught some of your interview with Vicky yesterday, and
Yeah.
bizarrely enough, we've gone through a very similar scenario.
Okay.
I obviously I do the music side and all that great stuff that allows me to exercise my performing demons. But I'm also in the IT industry, and I actually resigned from my previous organisation and accepted a position with an IT company at the beginning of March. So in the finest tradition with the IT industry, you tend to have a bit of a break and go into something called garden leave for a period.
Right.
Um, so I went on to garden leave, and 2 weeks into garden leave in March, we all went into lockdown. So
Oh,
it's like, oh
yeah.
my goodness, what's going to happen? So I was a little bit in limbo. I would imagine a little bit like Vicky. I was a bit in limbo for a couple of weeks. But I was incredibly fortunate enough to for the organisation that I was going to, and they said, no, that's fine. We still need to take the appointment. You're still starting. So I started a new job in IT role beginning of April. So I've actually been working from home in this position I'm talking to you in all the way through April, May, June, July, all the way through that period. So for those 4 months, I've been working permanently from home. Yeah, it's been, I have worked from home before, and it's been challenging. I'm certainly extremely fortunate that I've had a job through all of this, and obviously I've been earning money, and I'm very thankful and grateful for that. But certainly, what it does do is you end up sort of like getting very bad habits from a working perspective. So I found myself sort of doing 12 and 13-hour days. Um, and it's you suddenly find yourself like you've logged on before like 7:38 in the morning, and then suddenly you're still working and doing stuff at sort of 8 and 9 o'clock at night. So so that's the downside, not to businesses because they get great productivity.
That's fine. But it's all about being able to shut up, isn't it? And when you work
Yeah,
in an office or you work away from home,
yeah,
once you finish your shift or your day at work at 5 o'clock,
mm,
that's
mm,
it. You go home, you enjoy your
mm,
time. When
yeah,
you work from home, very much like, well, I suppose I work from home, and to an element, you work from home as well with your singing and presenting and stuff like that, because everything has to happen. It all needs organised,
mm,
stuff like that.
mm,
But it's
mm,
very hard to just shut off and
yeah,
just shut the laptop down or computer and just say that's it, done. But I've got much better at
mm,
it recently.
mm.
I've had to because well, there's not an awful lot I can do at the moment. So I've had to,
No,
you know,
it's it, it's challenging for everyone in different ways. I've certainly found that ability to shut off and switch off and enjoy sort of um, the leisure time a lot harder. But as I said, I'm incredibly grateful and incredibly fortunate that I've been able to continue to work and know and understand and absolutely sympathise with my colleagues that are full-time in the entertainment industry in one form or another, who are going through some incredibly challenging times. And uh, my heart goes out to them because it is really, really, really hard if it's a full-time thing that people are doing. So I mean, I've been incredibly fortunate. The most challenging part about it is just that sort of like repetitive eat, sleep, work, repeat. It's been quite a challenge, but
As you can tell, Nigel,
it is what it is.
my repetitive eat is mine goes like wake up, eat, eat, little walk, sleep. Can you tell? Oh, dear. I have put on quite a bit of weight, but I mean, I can't do it. I'm not doing anything, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
The most that I mean, at the moment, obviously, I'm doing this tour of cathedrals, which is something for me to be able to focus on. It's not a form of income. I'm not getting paid for it, but luckily, with the support of my sponsor, I'm able to do that. You know, it gives me something to do. But other than that, I've not really been doing anything. So all I can do is go for a little walk in the garden, and that's
Absolutely.
it.
It's that's. I mean, I certainly the kind of all the music side of it and all that, because I've been quite focused on what I've been doing. Obviously, a new role, and you want to make a good impression, so you jump in with both feet and you do it.
For you, really, to be
I think it probably did. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I don't do as many musical dates a year as some people do, performances as some people, and much like yourself than you do. But all of, like everybody else in our position, all of the dates that I had in the diary have been cancelled. Nothing at all. From March, then it dwindled in April, and then that was it. As we got into May, there's nothing now. I'm hoping that Christmas will be the rebirth in more ways than one of the industry.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and I'm hoping that maybe I'll be able to do another stint this year.
I hope
back in the wonderful places as I did last year.
I do hope that Christmas. I do hope that we're able to do something at Christmas. I don't think we're going to be able to do the things that certainly that I would, you know, the shows that I put on at Christmas. Yeah. I'm not sure that's going to be able to be doable with everything going on. I don't know. It's very difficult, you see, Nigel, and it's very much like yourself with shows and stuff and charity events that you do. It's not so much about just the social distancing aspect. It's about getting people through the doors, or getting people that actually want to come and be in an environment where so many other people are going to be. And that's not a guarantee. You know what it's like to put on these shows. It costs money up front and a lot of time to organise, and to then expect people to then come into that sort of environment when they've been told it's not necessarily the safest of environments for anybody over the age of 70. That's our main audience. That's our captive audience, is that age group, you know. So it's such a touch and go sort of situation. And I think genuinely speaking, I think 2020 is a complete write-off, you know, and it is, like you said, Nigel, it is what it is. You've got to take it, and I just hope that we can get back to some sort of normality for 2021. Do you have much planned for next year, Nigel?
Well, most of the events, like for weddings and things that I was involved in, have been moved to next year, so that's good, and I'm very grateful for that. There's been some realignment of some great sort of shows that I was going to be involved in this year, with a big band that didn't happen, of course, this year, because the problem with that is of them all getting together to rehearse. So that was a big challenge. So that all fell by the wayside, unfortunately, because of the COVID. So I'm hoping that will get back into play next year. There was a couple of events that are local events I've been involved with. One of the automobile rallies festival, that will be next year now as well. So obviously that's about the same time. A lot of them have been pushed through to the same time next year. So so I think it's almost like sort of pushing this year aside and just starting again next year. So
it's going to be
fingers
tricky
crossed.
because, like you said, everything from this year is cancelled or been postponed to next year. But obviously, then everything that's already in place next year is still going to be happening. So actually, like you said, we're going from nothing, hopefully, anyway, nothing to double in 2021. So hopefully it should be a very busy year for us all.
I hope so. Absolutely. Hope so. And I look forward to hearing more from yourself, young JD. I love listening to you perform as well. So, and hopefully we'll be able to do a concert next year, because that's something that we've all been discussing, wasn't it?
Oh, we've been discussing it for years, Nigel. But with our very busy schedules, it's hard to actually get a moment together, isn't it? And to actually put something together for that, you know, it's like you said.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people realise just how much goes on behind the scenes in trying to organise such an event, if you want to call it that.
Absolutely, but fingers crossed we can do that next year, and we'll have to find a number, and maybe we can do it. We can do a duet. How's that?
Oh, that would be lovely, wouldn't it?
I'll have to have a think about
that. We can find something. Anyway, Nigel, it's been a pleasure having you here. It's lovely to hear your voice and to see your face. Thank you very much indeed, and I wish you all the very best, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and stay safe.
I will do, and same to you and the family, and anybody that obviously picks this up and listens. I hope they've enjoyed it and had a bit of an insight into yours and my our entertainment lives today.
And if they haven't enjoyed it, then sorry about that. You can message Nigel privately.
Well, they're not going to recognise me in the street, are they?
No, quite. It's quite terrible, really. Anyway, thank you very much, Nigel.
God bless. Thanks, mate. Bye.